I found 15 sci-fi movies from the 80s almost no one talks about. Some are so lost they never even hit theaters. There's Mark Hamill playing a post-apocalyptic lawman, Sean Connery blowing away hitmen on a Jupiter moon, and a VHS tape that brainwashes people. Slipstream is exactly the kind of mess that happens when a studio gets ambitious, but nothing lines up. The world's been wrecked by climate disasters, and now there's this massive jet stream, the Slipstream, controlling everything. Mark Hamill, fresh off Star Wars, decides he wants to be taken seriously, so he plays Will Tasker, a lawman who's pretty much a fascist. His job is to chase down a fugitive android played by Bob Peck. Then Bill Paxton shows up as a bounty hunter, grabs the android, and the whole thing turns into this wild aerial chase across wind-blasted wastelands. The movie tries to be a road movie, sci-fi epic, and a philosophical drama all at once. What's nuts is how many big names they stacked into this. Hamill, Paxton, Peck, plus cameos from Ben Kingsley and F. Murray Abraham. The director did Tron, the producer did Star Wars. Should have been a slam dunk, right? Instead, Slipstream crashed. Barely any release in the UK and Australia, nothing in the US. Critics thought the story was a mess, said the pacing was all over the place, 43% on Rotten Tomatoes. This flop tanked director Steven Lisberger's career and bankrupted producer Gary Kurtz. The movie feels chopped up because it is. The original script was way more violent, but budget cuts and weird choices gutted whole scenes. Hamill said he took the part hoping he'd get noticed as a Bond villain type. Didn't work, but he tried. This movie's got wild visuals and moments, but never comes together. Now for something completely different. This isn't spaceships or lasers, it's literally Tilda Swinton in a hotel room, playing an alien robot named Friendship who gets stuck in Jordan during the Black September conflict. She's supposed to be a peace envoy, but now she's trapped in the middle of a war zone and ends up in these long philosophical talks with a British war correspondent. That's the whole movie. It's just two people in a room, talking about what it means to be human while explosions go off outside. The movie goes hard on the ideas angle. It feels more like a stage play than a sci-fi movie, but Swinton absolutely sells it. This is her before she was famous, and you buy every second that she's not from this planet. There's even a little Easter egg. Director Peter Wallen named her Friendship after a Soviet satellite. The film didn't make any money, nobody saw it, but the British Film Institute put it on Blu-ray, so now you can finally watch it as it was meant to look. It's a one-off, since this is the only movie Wallen ever directed. If you want pure 80s sci-fi camp, Remote Control is it. Kevin Dillon plays a video store clerk named Cosmo who finds out there's a mysterious VHS tape turning regular people into brainwashed killers. The tape itself is a fake, cheesy 50s sci-fi movie, but in the story it's actually a device aliens are using to take over Earth, one rental at a time. Anyone who watches it turns into a Trancer and starts doing the aliens' bidding. So now Cosmo and his girlfriend are trying to stop this alien mind control scheme, running around LA, dodging zombified neighbors and evil agents. It's half thriller, half parody, all wrapped in neon and B-movie tropes. Director Jeff Lieberman made offbeat horror before this, and he loaded the film with in-jokes and satirical digs at video culture. The budget was $3 million, but Lieberman said he needed $10 million to really pull it off. The whole thing feels like a low rent they live, just with more jokes. Lieberman loved the movie enough to pay for the 25th anniversary DVD himself, so even if it's goofy, it's got some heart. Now this is the strangest one. Spirits of the Air, Gremlins of the Clouds is Alex Proyas's first film. He did this 6 years before The Crow. The whole thing is set in a post-apocalyptic Australian desert. There's barely any tech, barely any plot. It's just a brother and sister, Felix, who's Bible-obsessed and in a wheelchair, and Betty, who's completely eccentric, living in a rundown shack, obsessed with God and building a flying machine. One day, a drifter shows up, and together they try to build this rickety airplane to escape the wasteland. There's almost no dialogue, just visuals, windmills, red skies, weird contraptions. The whole thing is like Mad Max meets a fever dream. Proyas was only 26, barely had a crew, and shot everything on 16mm film. Just getting the film stock was the most expensive part. He meant for it to be a short, but when some investors showed up, he stretched it out. The movie played at a couple festivals, then disappeared. It was basically lost for years until Proyas restored it and finally released it in 2018. Outland is what you get when you take a classic Western and just shove it into space. Sean Connery is Marshall O'Neill, working security on a mining colony on Io, one of Jupiter's moons. The miners start dying under weird circumstances, and O'Neill figures out that the company is pushing a dangerous drug to keep everyone working harder, no matter the cost. When he tries to shut it down, his bosses send hitmen to get rid of him. This is basically High Noon in space. Connery's got almost no backup, just a world-weary doctor played by Francis Sternhagen, and he has to stand alone against the assassins. Outland has zero-gravity violence, shotgun face-offs, and a mining colony that looks like it's falling apart. The director, Peter Hyams, always wanted to make a Western, but the studios told him the genre was dead, so he moved it to outer space. The movie pioneered some effects work, blending miniatures and live actors. It didn't make a splash when it came out, but it nails that frontier in space vibe. If you want a gritty, serious sci-fi with corporate villains and a classic showdown, Outland delivers. Released everywhere outside the US as The Salute of the Jugger, The Blood of Heroes is what happens when you mix Mad Max, sports movies, and pure post-apocalyptic grit. The setup is violent and straight to the point. In a dead future, packs of juggers roam the wasteland, dragging their gear from village to village. Their sport looks like rugby smashed into gladiator combat. The whole goal is to jam a dog skull on a stake while the other side tries to beat your head in. The team at the center is led by Sallow, played by Rutger Hauer, the classic worn-down pro. David Webb Peoples, the same guy who wrote Blade Runner and Unforgiven, made his writing-directing debut here, pitching it as a kind of sports fable for a world without hope. He shot most of it in Australian deserts and deep mines. The matches use practical stunts and actors trained with real stunt coordinators. The hits and falls look and feel like they actually hurt. The whole thing is bonkers in the best way. Rocky by way of Road Warrior, with battered armor and dog skulls instead of trophies. The ending depends on which version you saw. The US cut leaves things open and grim, but the international version gives the team a shot at real resolution. This one's set in small-town Arizona. A gang of street racers led by Nick Cassavetes as Packard basically run the roads and terrorize anyone who gets in their way. Early on, they kill a teenager, and then out of nowhere, a mysterious new kid, Jake, shows up, played by Charlie Sheen. And so does this insane black Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor, driven by a helmeted figure called the Wraith. What follows is revenge by way of Burnout. The Wraith takes down the gang, one deadly drag race at a time, cars flying off cliffs and gang members going up in flames. It doesn't take long to figure out Jake and the Wraith are connected. The murdered kid is back, in the flesh, in the car, out to make things right and protect his old girlfriend, Sherilyn Fenn, before Twin Peaks. The movie doesn't shy away from the bonkers, sci-fi suits, ghost logic, and the whole Avenger from another dimension angle. Back in 1986, critics didn't get it. 33% on Rotten Tomatoes called out for its silly plot and weak acting, with only the car stunts worth watching, but cable turned it into a late-night favorite. The vibe here is pure 80s, rock tracks from Ozzy Osbourne and Motley Crue, a cast loaded with soon-to-be cult stars, and a style you can't fake. Production on The Wraith wasn't all neon and fun, though. There was a deadly accident during filming. A camera car flipped during a chase, killing camera operator Bruce Ingram and injuring others. The tragedy hit the crew hard, forced cuts in the budget and script, and killed off some bigger ideas, like a Dick Butkus cameo that never happened. My Science Project is the sort of movie only the 80s could produce. A high school gearhead named Michael finds a glowing alien gadget in a junkyard. Turns out it's a leftover from a crashed UFO. He ropes in his wisecracking buddy and, like any teen desperate for a science grade, plugs the thing in for his homework. That opens a time-warping portal which brings in everything from dinosaurs to mutants straight into their high school gym. Suddenly, there's a rampaging T-Rex, post-apocalypse freaks in the halls, and science class becomes survival class. Dennis Hopper, in full ex-hippie science teacher mode, ends up sucked into another dimension. It came out right after Weird Science and Real Genius, riding the same teen sci-fi wave, but almost nobody remembers this one. People and critics both hated it, 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. The New York Times said it was just a cheaper, dumber version of Back to the Future, with a few glimmers of drollery, but mostly a thin plot and a shoestring budget. Financially, it bombed, least successful of the year's science gone wrong comedies. This is full-on, low-budget sci-fi noir, barely seen in theaters but huge on VHS. Tim Thomerson plays Jack Death, a burnout cop from the future, sent back to 80s Los Angeles to track down Whistler. He's a criminal with psychic powers to trance ordinary people, turning them into zombie assassins. To do it, Jack uses a drug to project his consciousness into the body of his ancestor in 1985. Jack teams up with a young Helen Hunt, and together they take on an army of everyday people suddenly gone feral. The whole movie feels like Blade Runner and The Terminator mashed together, but on a fraction of the budget. It's basically 76 minutes of pure B-movie pulp, detective noir, fish-out-of-water comedy, and horror all slammed together. The critics ignored it, mainstream theaters barely played it, but on home video, Trancers became a cult classic. Set in a future where water is the rarest commodity, Robert Urich leads a crew of pirates who literally steal ice from the villainous Templars. During a raid, they rescue a princess, get dragged into a hunt for a lost water planet, and everything goes off the rails from there. The movie spoofs Star Wars and Mad Max, but does it with a kind of shameless glee. There's sword fights and chainsaws in space, a time warp that ages characters in seconds, and the infamous space herpes creature. The movie started as a serious sci-fi script called The Water Planet, budgeted at $20 million at MGM. Then MGM's financial crisis hit and the film was capped at $8 million. Rather than kill it, the producers and director Stuart Raffel reworked the whole project as a spoof. Visually, it's pure bargain bin, with costumes and props that look handmade and jokes that are either so dumb they work or just plain dumb. Critics mostly hated it. The New York Times called it a Star Wars knockoff made in an underdeveloped galaxy, said it was busy and bewildering, and panned the effects. Rotten Tomatoes sits at 17%. But honestly, it's just so wild and messy it's fun to watch. There's Angelica Houston as a sword-wielding pirate, Ron Perlman in one of his first big roles. Lots to actually love here. The Hidden is a perfect example of how to mash up genres and actually make it work. It starts out as a straight LA crime thriller, random guy on a rampage, high-speed chases. The LAPD has no idea what's going on. Then the FBI shows up, Kyle MacLachlan's Lloyd Gallagher partnering with the local detective played by Michael Nouri. That's when things go sideways. The suspect isn't just a violent criminal, he's being controlled by a slug-like alien parasite that jumps from body to body, loving every minute of human excess, fast cars, loud music, and reckless violence. What's great about The Hidden is how it keeps flipping between buddy cop action and this body horror sci-fi angle, with the alien slugs slithering into new hosts in some of the grossest transfer scenes you'll see from that era. The humor is dark. At one point, the alien, in the body of a stripper, strolls into a police station with a rocket launcher. The Hidden stands out for its non-stop pace, killer opening car chase, and practical effects. The alien slug is all puppetry and slime, which 80s horror fans still love. Critics caught on too. Even Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars, calling it surprisingly effective. A true hidden gem, no question. Enemy Mine is what you get when a studio bets on character-driven sci-fi instead of laser battles. Set in a future war between humans and the reptilian Drac species, the story drops 2 enemy pilots, Dennis Quaid as Davidge and Louis Gossett Jr. as Jariba, on a hostile planet after a dogfight. They hate each other, but if they want to survive meteor storms and deadly creatures, They have to work together. The film's second half gets even weirder. David has to fight off human scavengers who enslave Drax, finally risking everything to protect his adopted family. It's basically hell in the Pacific, but on an alien planet. Enemy Mine runs almost entirely on the chemistry between Quaid and Gossett Jr., both buried under prosthetics. At the box office, it tanked, grossed only $12 million on a $29 million budget. Janet Maslin of the New York Times called it this season's Dune, not a compliment, and Ebert gave it a lukewarm 2.5 out of 4. Still, the effects and acting hold up, and there's a twist here that will either gross you out completely or sell you this movie immediately. Robot Jox is the kind of thing every mech fan wanted as a kid. Giant robots fighting to settle world disputes after nuclear war, with pilots as national celebrities. The market, Western powers, faces off against the Confederation, Soviet-coded rivals in gladiator matches. Our hero Achilles is set for a rematch with the Confederation's Alexander after a controversial draw cost civilian lives. Achilles retires, but the call to battle brings him back for one last round, now joined by Athena, a genetically engineered trainee who looks up to him. What makes Robot Jox unique is how it never quite picks a lane. It's Cold War grit 1 minute, Saturday morning cartoon the next. The robots are all stop motion and models. There's some real cool stuff in there. Studio bankruptcy delayed the release, and by the time it hit theaters in 1990, the Cold War had ended. So the movie flopped hard, $1.3 million box office, barely anyone noticed. Critics said it was too serious for kids and too goofy for adults. But home video, thankfully, kept it alive. Mecha anime fans and practical effects fans know that Robot Jox did Pacific Rim decades before Del Toro ever got there. Barrett Oliver here plays D.A.R.Y.L, a polite, weirdly perfect 10-year-old found with no memory and placed with a foster family. He's instantly amazing at video games, sports, everything he tries. Soon it comes out, he's not a kid, he's an android. D.A.R.Y.L stands for Data Analyzing Robot Youth Lifeform, a secret government project. Once the military decides he's too human, they try to pull the plug. D.A.R.Y.L's foster parents help him escape. Most of the film is family drama, bonding with the parents, best friend scenes, D.A.R.Y.L learning what it means to be a person. The government stuff plays second fiddle to this angle. The movie had a smooth shoot, no big behind-the-scenes drama, but the marketing hid the android reveal to preserve the twist, which probably backfired. People thought it was just another kid movie, and it famously flopped, earning under $8 million on a $10 million budget. Still, it remains a minor cult favorite for people who want their sci-fi sweet, not cynical. Spacehunter is the definition of early 80s pulp. Shot in 3D, full of Mad Max wastelands and Star Wars knockoff action, with Peter Strauss as the grumpy space cowboy. He's out for a reward after 3 rich women crash land on a plague world. Tagging along is teenage Molly Ringwald plus Ernie Hudson as an old friend. The crew crosses Terra 11 dodging mutant bikers, sand pirates, pit monsters, and every possible 3D gimmick. Stuff constantly leaps at the screen, which looks hilarious in 2D now. The villain here is Michael Ironside buried under makeup, a classic grotesque tyrant running a gladiator arena for his own amusement. The final act is all about rescuing the captives and running a gauntlet of traps and monsters. Spacehunter is pure genre remix. You see traces of Star Wars, Mad Max, Road Warrior, Escape from New York, everything mashed together with a knowing wink. The movie's just a romp with colorful side characters, dumb jokes, and a ton of energy. It wasn't a hit, but if you want to see 19-year-old Molly Ringwald sass her way through an interplanetary wasteland, this is where you go.